Hello guys, welcome back to the boilerplate. And this video is for one of the comments that I've received in my last video for making the project structure. And yes, I agree. Like for me as well, one of the toughest things in interview is not the coding around, not even the tricky HR questions. It's tell me about your project. And if you are like me, you've probably thought my project doesn't even match the role I'm applying for. What do I even say? Okay, don't worry. This is super normal as I can see now. I've been through this too, and today I'll share some options, what I tried, what worked for me, and maybe one of these will click for you as well. Okay, but before, yeah, a quick thing before I start is I cannot share the actual details of my company projects because they're confidential. And you know what? You can also, I will say you should also keep this in mind for interviews as well. Don't disclose client names or sensitive details. What you can do is share the architecture, your responsibility, and explain things in general way. Like you can openly say that the project, and I cannot give you the insights of the project because they're confidential. That is it. And honestly, interviewers respect that because it shows you know your boundaries. Now, I have seen two kinds of situations most of us fall into, and I am assuming that you are in one of them. First is you did work in a project, but your role was completely different from the one you are interviewing for. And second, you hardly worked on it. Maybe just a bug fix, a few support tickets, or testing here and there. I've been in, okay, I won't tell you what case was mine, but let's let it be. And so I will give you the options you can try for answering tell me about your project. Okay, first option is if your role didn't match, just talk to your developers or seniors in your team, ask them how the project flow worked, understand the architecture and then frame your contribution around one part of it. But the part you understood well, the part you are comfortable with. You don't need to know everything. It's just enough to tell a believable story. Why? Because in MNCs, they give the entire project, we get entire project from the client, and we are not handling everything in that project, we are just a team member. So you can pick up a module, you can pick up a particular task, a particular functionality of an application is also fine. That you worked on this front end part, you worked on the you worked on the forms of the particular application. And I have few tips as well that you can say in interviews to eliminate the questions like router and accessibility. A11Y if I'm pronouncing it right. And second option, where you hardly worked on something, in that you just pick one small task that you did. Like I worked on the form validation or I handled a bug where the drop down wasn't loading. Now present that is something you fully owned. Understand it completely. Maybe you can try to build your own mini project around that. Third option, bonus option. If even that feels tough, then look at the clients your company works with. For example, let's say TCS. If TCS had a blank banking client, go to that bank's website, check their features or their UI in case of front-end developers, and pick one functionality you feel comfortable with. Frame your story around that. It's not fake, it's connecting dots and making your role sound relevant, okay? So it's fine. Now, I will give you some smart escape strategies that you can use. 1. Say you worked on an internal project. Immediately, no questions on accessibility, SEO, or fancy UI design because you worked on an internal project. Even if they ask, you can openly say that since I have not worked in that in my project, in my company, but I am ready to learn and I'm comfortable and I'm good at learning and all those lines you can paste because internal apps are only for business use. So you have not done any other efforts to make them look good and accessible for general user. And second, say it was a single page application. That way, if they ask about React Router, you can just say, we didn't use routing. Everything was handled in a single page. But still, I know this about routing and fundamentals you can explain. You can explain about a little code as well, tags or the functionality, the architecture of routing in React.js plus Next.js if you have mentioned Next.js in your resume. So it will create a good impression instead of backfiring you. So there was a situation where didn't know this, and now the situation is that you didn't know this, but still you are able to answer the question. So it's good for us. Okay, now we come to star method example. However, if you will ask me, I don't know personally. Whenever a question is thrown at me in the interviews, naturally I am too nervous to think about the percentage and the structure of the answers I'm going to give. Instead, I would go for the first options that I give. I will go to the senior developers or front end developers, and then I will ask them the structure of the project I'm working in. I will go to the client website and will pick one functionality that perfectly fits with my skills and that I'm comfortable with. I will try to integrate that functionality in my own mini project, so I get the hands-on, I get the practical experience. And when the question is being asked to me in interviews, then the interviewer will be able to see the confidence in my eyes because I have worked on it. So the story itself is fake. Work that I've worked on, that story is real. But since you asked for star method or their examples, I will explain you. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. And we will understand it with two quick examples. Example number one is HR leave management system, where the situation is the HR team needed an app for employees to apply for leaves. Task is I was responsible for the leave form. Action is I used React to create the form, added date validations, and integrated the backend API. And result, the process became 30% faster with fewer manual errors. Adding percentage is always better, but it's okay if you cannot. Example 2 is banking client dashboard, where the situation is the client wanted a dashboard for transactions. Task is my part was showing recent transactions in a table. Action is fetch the API data, rendered it in React, and added pagination. And the result is this reduced manual report downloads and saved time for business users. So, so just see how both these stories sound structured. And honestly, you can prepare 2 to 3 such examples for yourself when you'll be ready for most interviews. Okay, to sum it up, don't panic if your project story doesn't sound big enough. None of ours are perfect. You just need to pick the option that feels most natural to you. Explain it in a structured way and say it with confidence. And remember, if an interviewer pushes for client details, it's absolutely fine to say, I cannot share confidential information, but I can explain the architecture and my role in a generic way. That line alone shows your maturity. Okay, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching.